All right, welcome back to biology. Today I'm going to cover the second part of section 1.3, looking at cross-cutting concepts in biology, basically themes that reoccur in biology. So the study of biology revolves around several cross-cutting concepts like cause and effect, systems and system models, stability and change, pattern, scale, proportion, and quantity, as well as energy and matter, how it flows and cycles and is conserved, and then finally structure and function. So that's a lot to cover. So here we go. So the first overlapping concept is this idea of cause and effect, basically a mechanism and the explanation. And so successful research will reveal these rules or patterns and help us explain what's going on and to predict events in the future. So here are some examples of cause and effect, looking at the carbon cycle and how it affects the water cycle and climate variability. So the carbon cycle, if carbon is stored in the ocean, then our CO2 levels go down, and then our climate change should decrease. But then if oceans warm up, well, now CO2 or that carbon's being released, and now we have increased global warming temperatures, right? So that's just like an example. Systems, how parts of a whole work together. So here we have the human body, and we have a whole bunch of different organ systems working together to carry out the functions needed for life. The circulatory system transporting materials to all parts of the cell, the nervous system helping us to move and to communicate, the respiratory system to get the oxygen needed for cellular respiration, the digestive system, materials needed for that cellular respiration to make ATP, skeletal system, support and structure, muscular system movement. Okay, so all of these parts work together for that one organism. Stability, change in homeostasis. So living things maintain a relatively stable internal environment, and we just covered that briefly yesterday in homeostasis. But for most organisms, any breakdown of homeostasis may have serious or even fatal consequences. Patterns, which are basically all of these pictures right here. Patterns can be linear, maybe shown simple to complex, or they could be cyclical, okay? They go in a cycle, they rise and they fall. So here's a predator-prey interaction where the prey increases and then the predator catches up, and now we have too many predators and not enough prey, and the prey population crashes, and then the predator population will crash here shortly after, and it reverses. So this is a cyclical pattern. Here's the recent slowdown in global warming graph, just showing linear trends. All right, scale, proportion, and quantity. So science can happen at the very, very small levels, which we call microscopic, as well as the very large levels, macroscopic, so like huge organisms or over large global regional environments. Energy and matter. Energy flows, same with matter. It goes into different cycles like the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the carbon cycle, and it can be conserved. So, the thing I really want to emphasize, the difference between energy and matter, is that matter can't escape Earth, but energy can. So we tend to lose a lot of energy to space, but we also can gain that energy back from the sun. And I mentioned briefly yesterday, for when we need to get energy, you can trace everything that you eat back to the sun. Okay, so here I have a diagram just showing the carbon cycle, okay, where we have CO2 in the atmosphere, but CO2 can be taken in by plants and converted into different sugars. If the plant should die, and it gets buried and just exposed to some heat and pressure, it can turn into fossil fuels, and then we can burn that and release that back into the atmosphere. So it's just a nice little diagram showing the carbon cycle. Over here we have photosynthesis and cellular respiration and how they are tied together. So photosynthesis takes in CO2 and converts it to food, which we can eat for cellular respiration, and then release CO2 back to the environment right here. Structure and function. This is probably my favorite theme in biology, or I like to call it form follows function. So if you look at these insect mouth parts, you can get an idea of what they do. So here we have the mouth part of a fly, and it almost looks like a sponge, like a mop. That's what it does. It mops up food. Here's a beetle. Pinchers. probably used to grasp objects, to chomp materials. Here's the proboscis of a moth or a butterfly, and you can see that it is able to extend out and reach nectar deep into a flower. Here's the jaw of, I don't know, maybe it's a jaguar, okay? Jaguars have one of the toughest grips, strength bites in the world. And if you just take a look at that shape, you can explain, it pretty much explains why. Birds have hollow bones to make them light for flight. There's that form that follows the function of it. You'll see this with organelles. When we get to the mitochondria, why does it have all these folds? Well, we increase surface area, we can have a lot of chemical reactions occurring. So this is by far my favorite theme that reappears in biology. Form follows function, or structure and function. If it looks like it does something, that's probably what it does. All right, now I can't show this video because I know dang well that YouTube is going to shut me down because it's by the BBC. So in class, I will just pop up this video. But when we do watch it, how does structure follow function? And if plants can make their own food through photosynthesis, why would a plant species evolve a mechanism to capture and eat? So I think I'll put this as a note with a link, and then you can watch it and then answer that question. Okay, the final thing I think I want to discuss are the fields of biology. So biology does have a few fields, and I'm going to do my best to name most of them, but we do have global ecology, which looks at how do humans influence the animals or earth around us, right? Biotechnology, specifically looking at the ability to edit and rewrite our genetic code. So we're making lots of leaps and bounds in this field, especially after the discovery of the CRISPR gene, which basically allows us to cut genes. So cut genes out and swap them, but it does raise a lot of ethical issues, legal issues, as well as social questions. Like, just because you want to be tall, should you be tall? Or do you want to mess around with your genome, and so that you are extremely tall, so you have a higher chance of playing in the NBA? And if that's so, is that right? Is that ethical? There's this great movie out there called Gattaca. If you ever see it on Netflix or on TV or whatever you use, I would highly suggest watching Gattaca. Great example of biotechnology. All right, ecology and evolution of infectious diseases. So this is a pretty important field right now because we're running out of antibiotics. People have been misusing antibiotics, so that way bacteria have developed resistance to them. So when you're supposed to take your antibiotics for like the full day, maybe by day 5 you're like, oh, I'm feeling great, I don't need to take these anymore. So you don't finish your prescription, but the fact is some bacteria could have remained, and you didn't kill them all. So now they have developed a resistance to that antibiotic. So we're basically running out of antibiotics to kill infectious diseases. However, there is some good news. We have come across a new antibiotic, a super antibiotic, but the problem is we haven't been able to replicate it in the lab so we can mass reproduce it because it lives in very unique environmental conditions. But anyways, that is 1.3 part 2. So today I briefly went through the cross-cutting concepts of biology and then explained the different fields of biology, some of them anyways. I did not touch this standard or this learning objective because we have been using the metric system in all of science, or at least you should have been ever since the 7th grade. So that pretty much does it for chapter 1. Which means we are going to have a chapter 1 test coming up here soon. So tomorrow is a work day to finish your review guide. Your review guide is due at the end of the class period because I'm going to correct them over the weekend and give them back to you, and you are going to have a test on Monday dealing with chapter 1.